Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Walker Season 3, Episode 15. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. The way we had that breakneck speed in which everything went down, I was so surprised. Well, first and foremost, the FBI rolling up on the Walker home. I'm like, why is that? Why are you going to search his home? And it's like, oh, you look at Walker as a suspect. It's like, oh, okay, because it has been a little while between episode 14 and 15 for me because I'm getting to this so late because I completely forgot about it last week. I remembered the whole Julia basically being used by Kevin to basically say like, hey, Walker's a bad guy. He's actually been gray flag. He's been turned, yada, yada, so on and so forth. But it never crossed my mind that would extend to all of this is a massive, massive frame job to paint Walker as the bad guy. And I'm like, was that always supposed to be the end goal? And it seems like it was. Because at first I was like, was that not initially the plan? Did that just eventually shift into that being the plan? It seems like, obviously, we find out over the course of this episode, that was Kevin's agenda. Gray Flag had a bigger cause, but Kevin was so wrapped up in his own revenge. Because I'm sure Gray Flag was doing its thing in the background, obviously for a while now. But it came closer to the forefront the moment, I guess, Kevin felt good enough about using this opportunity to go after Walker. You know, so once again, why now after all these years? I guess it's just, I mean, the timing is interesting too because, like, obviously, like, Kevin's family situation recently had a development, so I'm curious if that played a massive role in it. But to be fair, that development, well, let's go ahead and talk about it. We find out that Kevin is Cooper's brother, and that's what because I was wondering about that, because I think last episode I had said like, oh, maybe his son, but then I was like, nah, I'd assume Coop and Kevin probably aren't that far apart in age, so I was like, maybe a brother situation. It turns out that's exactly what it is, and that's what this is all about, revenge against Walker, because he blames Walker for his brother not coming back. And that's actually a really deep and sad situation, because Walker has, like, that's tormented Walker for decades now, because he had to bury that because it was his only way to kind of find a way to move forward. Like, the Coop situation stayed with him, like, because Coop was not only like a mentor, was his best friend, it was like a brother, like a brother to him. And it's like, oh, like, Kevin's biggest issue was like, right, you didn't come to the family, like, you didn't give your condolences. It's because in Kevin's mind, it's like he didn't know the truth of what went down, because I guess the rest of the team didn't want to talk about it either. Everything that they went through, like, Walker wanted to forget everything. He wanted to bury it, and his, like, spending all those years never visiting Coop's family came back to bite him. But it's also like, how can you fault him for not wanting to kind of drudge up the past? It was scarring. It was a lot. And now he also recently found out Coop's alive, and it's like, and once again, he modeled himself so much after Coop, and now you're also telling me, like, the man that I modeled myself after abandoned everything, deserted, like, let people think he was dead. Which, you know, with a lot of the stuff that Walker kind of goes through this episode, you can see the deep-seated parallels between him and Cooper, that he could have just as easily been Coop. I mean, sadly, he went down that route, because when things sadly got tough, like, what did Coop do? He disappeared. Walker did too with the Rodeo King situation after Emily died. Is like, because once again, it's like the Coop thing and then Emily dying. I think it ended up being this cycle of him kind of burying things and keeping it to himself. And it's just, that's been Cordell's biggest issue, going full cowboy and stuff like that. That's always been his issue over the course of the show, because he's never fully dealt with everything. He never fully dealt with the Coop stuff. He never fully dealt with the Emily stuff, and that what led to him kind of diving deeper into work, trying to escape it rather than facing it, essentially, you know? And so it's like, yeah, like, I don't know if I really put those pieces together until this episode really kind of went like, no, like, there are so many parallels between Coop, and it's like, well, at least Walker fortunately enough, had people around him to drag him back, to bring him back to his family. It took a while, but him and his family are in a good place. Coop, sadly, always stayed out there in the cold, essentially, in a metaphorical speaking. I know that's more spy spycraft stuff of being left out in the cold, but I think it's still applicable in this case, because he left himself out there, never letting his family know that he was still alive. And if he had, who knows how much hurt and pain this could have prevented, how much death it could have prevented. Because my initial thought was, well, maybe the initial plan was to actually recruit Walker. But no, it was always about like the long game of this frame job. I guess that's why they needed Julia too. So, because later on, Kevin's partner's like, oh, we needed that journalist could have been useful to us. I guess it's like, right, we could have used her to kind of sow disinformation or something like that. Maybe that's what they were saying. Like, oh, we could still have used her, because I don't think Kevin was counting on her being there, because I guess he wasn't counting on her trying to talk to Cordell to try to get the story straight. And that's also the sad thing, too. We find out that Julia did die. It's like, Jesus. Once again, it's one of those days where I feel bad because I'm like, oh, like, I didn't know if this was a play. Like, as in, like, oh, she's really hurt and she's... Because, like, that ending made me seem like... Episode 14's ending made it seem like she might be dead. The way Cordell was acting, but I couldn't fully tell. It's like, nope, she's still, her death is solidified. But I was wondering, could it have been like a trick by Grey Flag, in the sense that she was all about the cause and she was willing to die for it, because they kind of have that mentality. So I was curious about that. But then I also wondered, could she have been legit? And it turns out she was legit, because I was so suspicious of her, and sadly she was just another victim, another casualty, another sacrifice in this Grey Flag war that they're waging. So, but kind of circling back to where I started off, the FBI questioning everybody, even questioning Liam, and obviously Liam takes offense to that. It's like, me and my brother were tortured, and you're thinking he got turned, because it's, oh, he ran from the crime scene, because he's like, I know how this looks, because he's like, the moment I like tried to radio, I heard an APB out on me, and it's like, oh, the fix is in. Like, Julia died, and especially because it's like, Julia was only there because I called her there, and she wanted to go there because she started to care about Cordell, and it's like, right, we've been through something no one else has really been through, and they connected it over that, and it's sad, like, that could have been a budding thing, and that was kind of nipped into, I mean, who knows what that could have been. I mean, it's kind of a moot point at this point, but you're like, Jesus, that's rough, dude. And now it's like, everyone's after Cordell. Larry's going to have put out a statement saying, like, yeah, we're going after Cordell, but he doesn't believe it. Him, nor Cassie, nor Trey, but all of them are feeling, especially Trey and Cassie, are feeling a certain way in the aftermath of all of this. Trey's beating himself up because he thinks the reason why they figured me out is because I dropped my notebook. They easily cracked the code and stuff like that. But it's like, who knows how long Kevin was really, really on to you? It might even, probably wasn't until, Kevin legitimately probably did want you on his side, but it probably was the notebook to be like, yeah, Trey's a traitor, but like, let's keep him close to test him. And it's like, right, he failed the test. So, because Kevin wanted to believe, but he wasn't going to be naive enough to like have a blind spot with this. So Trey's biggest thing is like so many people are dead because of me. What was the whole point of me going undercover if I couldn't even prevent so much death? Because it turns out the mayor's still alive, but he's in critical condition. But everyone else, the FBI agents that were there, and obviously Julia, are all dead. So you have that. Then you have the whole situation of Cassie blaming... Well, Cassie's feelings are complicated. I wish she didn't blame Trey, but I get where she's coming from, but I also disagree. Because for her, it's like, you guys kept pushing me. Like, hey, I had a weird feeling about Kevin, and you didn't listen to me. But I'm like, first and foremost, like, Trey was just as much betrayed as you. Yes, he didn't have as intimate a relationship with Kevin like Cassie did, but it's still like, no, that was my bro, that was my friend. I didn't see him for what he was. Like, yeah, I thought he legitimately was a good guy. Like, I try to tell you, like, hey, see Kevin the way I see him, but Cassie takes offense to that. Well, now I'm also looking at it as I guess that also opens up, because I always thought there was going to end up being a Trey and Cassie situation, but I don't know if he necessarily, well, he's a ranger now, so that changes things, because I was about to say, because of the whole him and Mickey situation, would he even go down dating another ranger route? But I was like I say, she's got complicated feelings. It's like, this is someone she fell for, and then, this is the first time she'd really kind of put herself out there in a very long time, and it turns out the person you put yourself out there for not only is the leader of this domestic terrorist group, not only did he get close to you to manipulate you, not only did he kill a lot of people, on top of all that, he's also framed your partner severely. So it's like, she's got all types of feelings that she has to sort through, and she feels like Trey should have had her back. It's like, right, I think it's because Cassie wants to say that, but even you, like, your feelings of regard, like, you got an off feeling about him, but there's no way you could have, like, known this. Like, no one would have seen Kevin for being who he is. Like, no one would have. But I think it's for her, it's just I had a feeling, and you made me doubt myself, because I think it also, she's equating the Trey thing to the Miles thing, because so many people made her feel like she was crazy, she was out of her mind with her instincts and everything about Miles, but it turns out, no, she was right. And so that's why she feels like with the Trey thing, it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing. You were someone who was, because Cordell was coming from the perspective of, yeah, he'd always had a terrible work-life balance, and he wanted you to kind of like be able to work through that. So it's like, hey, take the leap with Kevin. It seems like a good enough guy. Like, once again, no one saw him for, and so I think for her, she wants to believe like, no, I could have seen him for, you wouldn't have. Even if you thought something was off with Kevin, it still wouldn't have prevented this. It's not like you would have seen him for who he really was. But maybe she feels like she would have if her judgment wasn't clouded by a budding romance between them, getting close to him. I mean, he did always dodge telling stuff about himself, so. But there's no way she would have ever clicked any of that with Cooper. I'm saying Cooper. It's Coop, right? I don't think it's short for Cooper. I think either way, would have never clicked it with Coop. Maybe if she had talked to Cordell, been like, oh, that kind of lines up with Coop. Like, maybe then, but maybe that's also another reason why. I mean, you probably never want to get too close to people you're using as a, target and stuff like that. So, but I do think maybe on some level there were legitimate feelings there, but it's like, right, the mission comes first. So, like I said, either way, I'm kind of going on all these multiple diatribes because there's just so many interesting and fascinating facets to this whole thing. But once again, back to the FBI, it's like the agent in particular, she's the one that kind of dealt with Cordell after the Rodeo Kings thing. So for her, it's like, oh, like that was already kind of a sign that he was slipping. You add in the fact that he was tortured, they broke him. It's like Walker hasn't always been right in my book either way, so she already kind of had like an eye on him, and now this just kind of added more fuel to the fire. And now the family's kind of kept in the dark. They're having like FBI agents all up the wazoo around their place, and it's just like, and they're not really sure what's going on with Cordell, so it's a stressful situation. Obviously, Cordell needed to stay off the grid. He didn't want to be near his family because he ran because he's like, I need to be able to clear my name. If I can catch Kevin, I can clear my name and this will be fine. He ended up going to Jerry, which we have not caught up with Jerry in a good couple episodes about what she's been up to. Still dodging what her family circumstances are that she's dealing with. I'm curious, is that just kind of like a way of writing around, like maybe like Odette Annabelle like has like other things she's working on right now, so it kind of takes away, like she can't be in Walker as much as her character should be, or maybe that writing was just kind of give her like time to do other projects and then like kind of pop in. Maybe she won't be in the show as frequently this season or something. Maybe that was always kind of the thing. I mean, to be fair, it's like Jerry was gone for like, obviously like she's pretty frequently in season 2. I mean, it deals with her family, but also like season 1 she like disappeared for like, she popped in obviously back to back for a while and then like disappeared for a couple episodes and then came back, so maybe it's kind of a very similar circumstance in this situation as well. But either way, Walker turned to Jerry just because he needed someone to turn to, be like, hey, I need you to let my family know I'm okay. And he was going to go on the run and stuff, but he ended up passing out. I mean, he hadn't taken a chance to just stop and breathe after the after the explosion, after all of that. After the explosion, he just ended up running and everything, so he hasn't had the time to stop to breathe. And he starts wondering, like, he tells Jerry about Coop, and it's just about wondering if they had a very deeper connection. And the fact is, they both, once again, feel like their families are better off. He's just kind of like, I've caused my family so much pain, they'd be so much better off without me. But for Jerry, it's like, this ain't the person I know, and this ain't the Cordell I want to, this ain't the person I want to know. And ended up calling Stella, which led to, Bonham showing up there trying to convince, because Cordy was reading too much into everything. It's like, I dragged my family into this, I caused them so much pain. Once again, you also add into Julia, like, whoa, Julia was only there because of me. Like, I'm the common denominator in all the pain of my family. Like, they managed on their own without me because of the whole Rodeo King. Like, my family held things down, especially looked after my children when I kind of up and left them. And so when it's all said and done, Bonham is like, right, yes, I told you I wanted you to move out, but he's like, that was just because everything that went down with your mom, I was angry. And he's like, right, and then like your mom, I got, I misplaced that on you, and then your mom kind of set me straight. But it's like, you get this from me, Cordy, but you get the feeling like the only way you can protect your family is by sacrificing yourself. And it's like, that is not the case. We don't need your protection if it means your absence. We are family, it is we are in this together. And to me, I think that's such I like that characteristic, because one of my favorite fictional characters, Rain Schwarzer, it's from a video game that I love. He has that exact same complex of like, right, I want to protect the people I love, even if it kind of costs me my life, because their happiness, like he can't always equate it in their head, like, your family loves you, they need you. Yes, we get you want to protect us, but we need you. Don't just kind of handle things on your own. That's, once again, that's, as I was bringing up earlier, that's always been Cordell's, one of his biggest flaws is like he tries to handle everything on his own. He bottled so much. So it's like there's so much he needs to unravel in the aftermath of all of this. But he luckily had his dad's back. Well, his dad luckily had his back during all this, so it's a good thing Jerry did call. So they went after Kevin, which we found out a little bit. There's still a lot of questions that had to be answered about. Right. Kevin did have a backer. It was like a tech billionaire or whatever. He was like an energy billionaire guy or whatever that was, I guess, trying to find like renewable energy or something like that. He ended up backing Kevin's play, but Kevin's like, it was for the cause, but Kevin got so caught up in his own revenge. It's like, right, you killed a reporter, you didn't even kill the mayor, so this all blew up in our faces, and Kevin ended up killing the guy. Cordell and Bonham ended up taking out some of his team on the outside and made their way to Kevin, which Kevin had that confrontation and finally, because it wasn't until Cordell was watching the news and saw Kevin's dad on the news that he remembered. I didn't even piece that together until they flashed back to it. I didn't even correlate that it was the same person, but it's Coop's dad. In that moment, he figured out, I was like, right, this is about your brother. But he's like, yeah, you left my brother. You didn't go back for him. But it's like, no. And I guess maybe that's also why Kevin tortured Tommy and stuff just to pump him for information. I don't know if it was to find out more stuff about Cordell or what, or whether that was just to, once again, feed the whole... Because this was never about... Because I'd wonder if this was about recruiting them. It never was. It was always about taking them down because this was his personal vendetta. I wonder, did he... Well, no, because I was about to say, we know the person who killed Tommy is that Andrew guy. So, but I was about to say, like, could Kevin have done that himself? It's like, no. He probably would have always gone after Walker himself. I mean, this was kind of his thing, so it was always him kind of going after Walker. But Coop shows up and apologizes because it's like, no, this is on me. I hurt both of you. I hurt a lot of people because I thought me being out of your lives would have been so much better. And Cordell's listening to that, and he's hearing like obviously the exact same thing. So he realizes like, right, I modeled myself a little too much after Coop, and now like the fact is I'm making the same mistakes as Coop. Like, I was luckily able to rectify some of it, but also I still have that nagging feeling like the people in my life would be better off without me. And because it seems like their dad was very abusive, because Kevin's like, you were supposed to be us. You promised when you came back it would have been us. You left me with him. So it sounds like there was some probably abuse stuff that was going on, and maybe that played a role in Coop wanting to just kind of get away from himself. I don't know. But in the end, Cordell ended up having to chase after Kevin. I was curious how this was all going to ultimately go down. And luckily, Trey and Cassie showed up just when the showdown happens. And Cordell was out of Animal, and it was Cassie who ended up taking Kevin down, which that's a whole lane of issues in itself. So, along with everything Trey's feeling, him and Cassie are not on good terms right now because she still has that underlying feeling of like, you're supposed to be my friend, we're like roommates, and you basically didn't listen to me when it happened. And so they're not going to be good. The fact is, she's still the one that put Kevin down, regardless of like, oh, I should trust my gut. You're still going to feel a certain way about being the one that ended up killing Kevin. That's going to still not sit right with you. Regardless of, yes, he was a very, very bad guy. He would have killed Cordell. So like you did the right thing. There's all of that. So I think going forward, because I would have thought like, oh yeah, the gray flag stuff, like Kevin would have still been out there, and we had to. It's like, no, Kevin's dead, but it's like I guess it's kind of like a Hydra situation, both the mythological creature and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. situation, but also obviously that's where Hydra gets its name from. Well, there's the whole Hydra in human thing, but it still stems from the same mythology or whatever of how like, hey, you cut off one hand, another pops in its place. The organization of Grey Flag is still out there. I mean, Kevin is still like because the right hand guy that got away with him last episode, he wasn't there. Not unless he was one of the people that got popped by Bonham and Coop and Walker this episode, but I'd assume like the operation's still out there going just without Kevin. Like the plans are there because it's bigger than Kevin, so he might not be around anymore. Oh well, that was his fault for getting so caught up in his own revenge. This is ours to lead. So I think Grey Flag's still going to be an entity going forward, but I think a big part, at least for the next couple episodes, you'd assume it's going to be the fallout of this, especially on the Cassie front, on the Trey front. Obviously, Cordell has been cleared because of Coop's testimony, and the aftermath of that, like him still being alive, I wonder will he introduce Coop to the rest of his family and stuff. Obviously, like he only got time with his dad this episode, but obviously being back around Liam, Abby, Stella, and August, and once again, still the Jerry storyline that's open and what that Broussard family business is that she's dealing with. So there's still so much to kind of pull from this. The FBI agent being like, right, hopefully next time we cross paths, it's us on the same side. It's like, yeah, because every time you guys have run into each other, it's always been her kind of being very distrustful of you. So everything's clear this time. So I'm assuming that is going to be something we see in the future. But where all of this ends up taking is definitely going to be interesting. Once again, I am getting to this late. There is no episode this week or next week. I believe it returns. What I was reading, episode 16 is going to be on April 27th. So do double check that as well. But I just Googled it before I started recording this. So I do believe I'm right on it. But either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all this. I don't know how long this season is. Going to season 1 like 18, and wasn't season 2 like about the same? Yeah, season 1 was 18 and season 2 was 20. Okay, so I looked it up, and I decided, I was like, well, since I already got my phone right here, might as well look it up. I believe, from what I was just seeing, this season's only going to be 18 episodes, so I figured I was curious if they were going to go back to 18. So that means we've only got 3 episodes left. So a lot could go down on that front, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where these last episode takes us, but also all that ends up going down in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.